Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Goodman Games official Twitch channel. Tonight we've got something special in store. Just an unboxing of a little thing called Original Adventures Reincarnated Number 6, Temple of Elemental Evil. You wouldn't know it by reading all the things online that anybody's excited about this product, but we're hopefully, I think it seems like people are getting their books. They're arriving on doorsteps, but we're going to bring you a unboxing of it in case you're still waiting for yours to come, or you're considering uh, putting in an order. We're going to give you kind of a preview of everything that you can see and expect to find here in this latest product. So, my name is Alex. I'll be sort of playing host here, and kind of who I am and where I'm coming from. I'm the I don't know what you'd call it. I run a Twitch channel. I run a Twitch channel called 20 Sides to Every Story. And over the past couple of months, we had the privilege of sort of previewing some of this and playing some of this great 5e conversion content that you'll be able to find in store for you if you pick up Temple of Elemental Evil. So we've had a lot of fun playing through it. We play it sort of as like a community style game, and so we've got people that'll jump into our Discord, sign up for a game, and so far we got like 30 or so players kind of romping around in Hamlet and taking forays down into the Temple of Elemental Evil. So I'm joined, of course, here with Chris Doyle, Director of 5e Development and Design, and one of the main drivers of bringing this product to us.
Thanks for the introduction, Alex. Yeah, this is just so people have some perspective. I started working on this project 26 months ago. So this is, it's been a long time coming, and there's obviously been a lot of excitement, and even us contributors who normally do this, normally we don't get super excited when our comp copies come because we've already usually moved on to the next product, or the next 3 or 4 products after we've done that. But this one's a little bit different, so very excited.
It's definitely different. It basically
Yeah.
doubles as like a home fitness program.
It does, and we're gonna show that too. I've got some cool props to kind of show you guys just how big it is and everything. So but Alex, thank you for joining us tonight and hosting along. So just give us a real quick blurb on, you said, so you guys have been playing almost every Friday night since about June, correct? Is that when you guys
Yeah,
started?
I think that sounds right. I think it was
Yeah.
maybe mid to late June.
Yep.
We're on like our 17th game, I want to
Wow.
say, is happening this Friday. And so yeah, we um did a lot in Hamlet. They're ingrained in the community now, like they're
That's great.
well, the funny thing is, in our Discord, if you come into our Discord, you'll see they're RPing in this RP channel like all day long. I can't even keep up with it. Like
Wow.
it's so active, and they're just loving it. And so yeah, we did the moat house, and they've just kicked down the doors to the temple, and oddly enough, spending a lot of time on the second level of the temple. Haven't
Mhm.
done too much on the first, so yeah.
That's awesome. So all right, well, let's do it. Let's do the reveal, and let's actually literally unbox this sucker.
The fog of war is lifting.
Yep. Oh, look at that. All right, so it's a big box. The box does not even fit on the screen entirely. It sort of does here. See if we can't get this kind of set up here. It's a large box. We're not going to be mean about it. Maybe we are.
Just get that gelatinous cube to kind of help,
That's why I
dissolve
set
some of
them
that.
on there to work on the
Yeah.
seams a little bit. But
Eat some of that glue.
all right. Yeah, look, bubble wrap comes in it. A lot of bubble wrap.
Bubble wrap of Zugget Moy.
There it is. Hiding in there. There she.
There it is.
Yep. Like that. I'm gonna put it at an angle since apparently it doesn't really fit. There's the
That's just
back.
how much product is there.
Yeah. I'm gonna show you in a second. So look at what we got here. We got a scale. So in the chat, can anybody guess how much this sucker weighs? Put it in the chat. There's no fabulous prizes, by the way.
It's just bragging rights.
Yep, just bragging rights. But I'm just removing some shrink wrap as we speak. And before we get to the great reveal of that, see, I'll put this back on here, and then get that 3.25 inches thick. 3.25 inches thick. And if you care to see what that stacks up to next to the Lost City, which is ore number 4, there's what that looks like.
Wow.
So yeah, you're getting over double what you normally get. So all right. So did anybody get to 16.8 pounds? Wow. 9 pounds, 7 pounds, 3 pounds, 52 pounds. Okay, that's pretty funny.
So is this like Price is Right rules?
Yeah,
Like
if you go over, it doesn't count. It's got to be.
Oh, okay.
All right. There it is.
8.5.
5 pounds. So far 7 pounds won it. 9 pounds was very close. So 8.5 pounds, folks. That's a lot.
So, Chris, was it always like when this project started? Was it always the intention to do 2 books, or was it sort of it became a necessity as you were going along?
Oh, it was not. I guess if we thought about it really hard, we would have realized it definitely would have been 2 books. But we didn't think that far ahead. Obviously, when we were doing this, we were just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it. But it got very quickly. I started figuring out, since the other ones I'd converted, like Isle of Dread and Lost City, those were 32-page modules. Actually, one might have been a 28-page module. This one is 128 pages, the original first edition. So that was pretty clear that it was going to be Reagan. And as a matter of fact, this was the first one that we actually had a team approach. It wasn't just myself doing it. We actually had 4 people doing the conversion. So that was a necessity. And then shortly after that, we were like, oh yeah, this is probably going to be 2 books. And then when we were actually crunching some of the numbers, we're like, yep, it's definitely going to be 2 books when we wanted to do stuff. And that was actually pretty refreshing too, because that let us do some of the longer things. Folks know from the previous ORs, there's a lot of really cool retrospective articles in the front by some of the industries, the illuminated industry folks. And that way we were able to do some things like there's one interview in there that's 22 pages long, and it's just like, we got the transcript back and we're like, huh, that's really long. It's like, well, we can put it in. So so we just did. So that was pretty awesome. So all right,
And that necessitated the slipcase. You want to show off that slipcase a little bit?
Show you that right there. So cool thing about this, it's got a nice little thumb tab over here. People might not realize that, but that makes it obviously really easy to get the books out. You can see how thick that cardboard is. I could actually even, it looks like it's about, I'd say maybe about 1/8 of an inch, maybe the thickness of it. So it's definitely pretty sturdy. We obviously have the classic Parkinson cover art on the front in gray. And then we still got the gray, and we got the classic. That is, I believe, the back artwork from the second, or I don't know if it was the second printing, but the light green version of Village of Palmlet. That's Rufus and Byrne there, very colorfully shown off. So yeah, there's a bunch of interesting things about this book. Obviously, we have, each book comes with its own satin bookmark. And we obviously got those to match. Yanking this guy out so you can see it there. And then in our other book, it's kind of a, I don't know if you'd call that a brown or what you would with that official color. This one's, the bookmark is more of a reddish kind of, it's not a bright red, but there you can see the bookmarks on that. A very interesting thing that Joe was telling me about, and you can't really see it on here, but if I had a pointer, so there is a ribbon, part of the stitching, there's a piece of ribbon here. It's fabric, you can barely see it. When you get your own copy, you can take a look at it. But we actually matched it to the cover. So this one is gray, and then this one might show up a little bit better. I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but it's right in there. But we had those actually match the cover, the color of each of the individual books, and that apparently was a little bit tricky. So from what I understand, that took a couple go arounds to kind of get right. And then obviously, so I'm going to move over here so I can actually show this off to you.
There's yeah,
Yep.
really cool.
Yep.
Doug Kovacs there.
Yes, Zug Tamoy herself over there. And I will eventually I'll show you guys this, but so all of the end sheets on both of the books are all they're all different. So but this is the original artwork one here. So yeah, that's just a gorgeous piece, and the artists love it when we go to them with one of these classic modules and we're like, okay, we give us your interpretation of Zug Tamoy fighting a bunch of adventurers, and then it's like, you know, being in a sandbox that they can kind of do whatever they want to do with. So let's see if I can get my camera down a little bit closer. Bear with me, folks. Let's see how that goes. Is that going to be too much? Nope, I think that's a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, cool. Saw what my webcam stand was. It's just a pile of ore books and whatnot. So, okay. So we got that there. All right, cool. All right, I got all kinds of stuff around me. Okay. So now we obviously go. So who did that artwork? Oh, that's also Doug as well. So on the title page there, as you can see, it was primarily myself, Rick Maffei, and Tim Wadzinski did the lion's share of the conversion, and we had two other authors, Jason Vey and James Floyd Kelly. They were additional contributors. They did some of the actual conversion as well. Your table of contents, we have this is all of the 5th edition credits over here, and in the table of contents there are 17 different chapters and 7 appendices in the book. So you are getting obviously quite a bit. So we always start these off with some really cool retrospective articles from either Goodman Games contributors and or some luminaries in the game industry. So this first one starts off with an awesome article by Brendan LaSalle talking about his adventures in the village of Hamlet, and some really awesome classic pictures. Cool story about these 2 classic pictures here. The top one shows Tim Wadzinski and his mom back in, I think, '83. And then the next picture down actually is a picture that a friend of mine pulled out from 1987. Ironically, we might have been going through the Temple of Elemental Evil in here. I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah. So, but those were actual photographs. You know, I don't know. You know, back in the day, we never took pictures of ourselves gaming. I mean, whoever thought that? I never thought that 40 years later I would be doing this as a career. So we had very few pictures, but my friend did actually have a couple pictures that his mom took while we were down in his basement gaming. And we actually grabbed them and I showed them to Joe, and Joe's like, oh, we got to use these. And this actually kicked off an interesting kind of little thing we did internally at Goodman Games, where a bunch of us actually went and scoured and looked for old photos. And we got together on Zoom and we kind of shared them all. And it was actually really kind of fun to try and pick out like who was who when they were little kids in that. So very cool.
I always appreciate these like write-ups, especially. I think Brendan has done a number of them in the past,
Yes.
where it's like talking about being in middle school or high school playing D&D or whatnot. And, you know, It's just fun to like kind of hear those stories of how wacky your game when you were a kid was
Yep.
like, and yeah.
And we got that James Maluski did the second one, his memories of Hamlet, including his own map of a temple level that he actually developed. So that was kind of cool. I think he's done a couple for our ore books, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but yeah, so he's got his one. We got some really good ones in here. Including this one that John Peterson. I think most folks know who John Peterson is. He's the author of Playing at the World, the definitive textbook if you want to find out all about the history of how D&D came about, and the story about all of the wargaming associations that they had back in the 60s and 70s, actually even before that, back into the earlier days, at the 50s. And really it's a fascinating, it's not light reading, but it's a fascinating thing. And so he did an outstanding article kind of given the history of Temple Elemental Evil. There's quite a backstory on, literally Temple of Elemental Evil was published, and literally a couple weeks later, Gygax was forced out of TSR. So this was a very tumultuous time. And obviously the whole story of Village of Hamlet coming out in '79, and then 6 years going by before before Temple of Elemental Evil came back. I mean, that's like a Kickstarter right there, being delayed is what that is, 6 years.
Yeah.
So, but this is a great little blurb. This over here, this is a reproduction of an original write-up that Gary had wrote about the Temple of Elemental Evil. So we reproduced that in here, which is amazing, and it just keeps getting better. Here's some reproductions of hand-drawn maps. The one on the left is Gary Gygax's hand-drawn map of the original Village of Hamlet, and the one on the right is actually Dave Arneson's map of the trading house, I believe it is. I believe it's the trading house. Yeah, the traders establishment. So, which is kind of cool. And then here we go back to another Gygax map where we see this is the actual the upper level of the temple, the kind of the outer around the surrounding areas around the temple, and you can kind of compare that to where he ended up with the original. And then this little guy over here, it's kind of hard to tell, but this was like a side view drawing that Dave Arneson did of the traders establishment. He put a lot of work into the traders establishment, which is kind of ironic. So then we get to everybody loves Harley. So building in the shadow of the Temple of Elemental Evil. So this is kind of his retrospective on what his thoughts are on the Temple of Elemental Evil and the Village of Hamlet. And did you ever play the original, Alex, or is this a little bit before your time?
So I did not play the original Temple of Elemental Evil. But in reading this and reading Harley's piece, love, sailors of the Starless Sea,
Yep.
and it was like reading this like dawned on me. Oh, of course that was an homage a little bit to
Yep.
the moat house in Temple of Elemental Evil. So that was kind of funny to like, oh, well, how did I not connect those dots?
Yeah, yeah, and that's and you'll notice we do that all the time. I mean, and sometimes we do it consciously, sometimes we do it unconsciously, where we're actually designing an encounter, and we were inspired by something years and years ago, and I'm like, I remember that encounter. I mean, there's just some of these encounters that you just never forget. On the left-hand side here, we've got a piece of artwork that was unused at TSR. I believe that's Caldwell. And apparently it was going to be used for AC. Was it AC9 there? AC5. The player characters, but it was never used. But you can clearly see it. It looks like it was a piece of artwork that showed the moat house, which is kind of neat there. And then obviously we've got the piece on the right hand side, which is the DCC version inspired, which is kind of cool. So yeah, if you guys, the more and more you guys read our material, the more and more you'll see how we were inspired by those old classics. Next, we have an article by Stephen Chenault of Troll Lord Games. And he actually talks about how he was running the original module. And there's a great picture of him. Love that hat, by the way. Behind the game screen, behind the DM screen, back in I think he said that's in the early 80s. So he says he thinks it might be while he was running Village of Hamlet. So cool stuff there. think we're getting to, all right, this is by far the best. We saved the best for last. An interview with Jeff Easley. Um, this is an amazing interview. Chris Arneson, one of the artists that worked on the book, actually knows Jeff Easley. Lives, I think, just a couple hours from him, or an hour from him. So I actually got together with him and conducted this interview, and it goes on for 22 pages. And it's a lot of it's because, lots of artwork, obviously, but not just D&D artwork, everything, and the inspirations. I mean, I found out so many things that I never knew about the inner workings of the TSR, art department, and Jeff Easley specifically. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Did you get a chance to read this whole thing yet?
I think I did, like when I first, kind of skimmed through it, but
Yeah.
there's so many great stories. It's one of my favorite things about the original Adventures Reincarnated books is that all that historical stuff that you get from these essays and the interviews.
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea Jeff Easley did model box covers, which was great, cover artwork for that. But yeah, somebody has to do those. So yeah, incredible. So we go into the legacy of Jack Fred. I'm not going to spoil it because it is a fascinating story. But there is this whole urban legend slash mysterious kind of artist called Jack Fred. And if you want to find all about it, definitely check it out. It's on pages, what are we looking at here? Page 32 and 33. Amazing stuff. Plus just some other classic artwork here from the man. So, and this, like I said, this article goes on. Apparently, Jeff he's a sculptor as well. He's done statues, which is just amazing. Yeah, this is really good stuff. This article is amazing. There's a picture of him with the other art department guys dressed up for, I think it was a Halloween party. But yeah, it must have been just, boy, to be a fly on the wall in the art department of
Yeah.
TSR back in like 1984, 85 must have been amazing. And that was when, when all of the Dragonlance was just kind of getting ready, was just kind of firing up and everything. So absolutely fascinating. So and we talked about the original publication. So this is something that Tim and I started doing as we're converting these modules. These modules were not perfect back in the old days. We actually find things that are wrong. If you recall back from or number 3, the elevators didn't line up in the spaceship dungeon. So we kind of found that, and we actually asked Diesel, the artist, about it, and he was like, yeah, sometimes it doesn't work out. It's just like, yeah, back in the day. So we did a whole couple pages here of exactly all the little things, and some of them are very minor, but some of them are kind of rather significant as well. So that was kind of interesting. Oh, I should probably have to see it, but yeah, this might be kind of tricky to see if we can do it because it's on the side here. So this is for those of you guys who are familiar with the village of Hamlet. There is an NPC, a second level fighter named Cobort, and he's in the inn, I believe. And he's allied with a monk, and he's like neutral alignment. The monk is definitely up to no good. But in my own home campaign, we actually ran afoul of these two, and we defeated the monk. But Cobort was like, he didn't, want to put his life on the line for the monk and everything. And he actually ended up joining the party. He joined our party, and we got him all the way up to 9th level as an NPC. And if you remember, well, for those of you out there, if you remember, when you were first level and you were an NPC, you only got half the experience points that you would normally get. So the rest of our characters, we were up to probably 12th level, I would think, something like that. And we got Cobort all the way up to 9th level, and he was actually a pretty good fighter for us. So I dug out my original character sheet from him when he was 9th level, and we included that in here as well. Just kind of cool. That was a trip down memory lane. All right, so now we go into the original publication. This is T1. So we're going to kind of go through quickly here. We don't have all night. But we have a faithful reproduction of the entire T1 in its entirety, the village of Hamlet, including the Moat House dungeon, and all of the maps. We even get your Gen Con ad here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, Gen
So
Con.
it's straight up reproduction of the original.
Yep. So if you guys ever want to run it in first edition, you can do that. And then we've got all of the maps reproduced, including little, why are these pages blank? And then we've got the pastel. So this T1 was originally printed in this kind of horrible pastel color, 2-color, and then it was reprinted in a equally horrible green. So, and I love green, and it's like the perfect zombie flesh green. So it works really well. And now we come across the first of our 2 gatefold maps. And this is the original blue village of Hamlet, and a nice fold-out map, along with some really cool artwork on the one side. And there are not one, but there are 2 gatefolds in here. Some more artwork. So now we go into the printing of the Temple of Unbelievable. Now, anybody who has the original knows that T1 is already reprinted in the front of this. So you get T1 again, including the Moat House, some different artwork, I believe. And then you go right into the entire, let's see, we're still in the Moat House here. Now we start getting into Nolb and the ruins. And nice full.
So even in with running this in 5e, it's still fun to go back to this original artwork that you find in the HD one and show that sometimes.
Yes, I noticed that when you were doing your live streams that you'll pop up some of the original artwork, which is kind of really cool. So the original super module, and again, this was the very first super module that TSR ever did, 128 pages. So I do want to show one part of it. So this goes all the way. Everybody, I think, remembers that spread. That was the NPCs that are stranded on the different elemental nodes. I want to show off. Here's a great, actually, one more page. Yeah, here we go. So, in the original module, this is what you got when you got the fire node. You got a little couple paragraphs here. You got a table, or bullet points, if you will, of rundown of each encounter area on the map. And then you got a couple of statistics blocks. That was it. And then you go right on to the water node. So remember that for later. I'm going to show you how we did our treatment of the nodes. And then each of the nodes had its own map. So you basically got a map, and I think the maps are at the back. Yes. So also, if you recall, the original super module had a little booklet, a little digest-sized booklet of just the maps. So we don't have that. Somebody actually already has been asking us. Somebody actually reached out to us, asked, "Oh my God, mine didn't come with the booklet." And I'm like, "No, it's fine. No, we just didn't do it that way." And then here's the nodes. So here's the map. So that was all you got for the nodes. Each of these maps had about, this is the air node, and there's the earth node and the fire node. Each of those had about 24 to 30, I think it was, encounter areas that were basically just an outline of there's fire giants in room number 1. There's fire toads in the next one.
No real context to what.
Now there was a couple little things. There was a few little things like, oh, and the giants have, they have some pet fire toads and stuff like that. But that was it. That was it. There was really nothing else. So once we get to page 225, my eyes are shut. So yeah, 225. Now we get to the 5th edition conversion, and the rest of the module from page 225 to 732 is all the 5th edition conversion. And we start off with just some introductory about, how to run the module. And again, if you guys are familiar with our series, we don't take anything out. I mean, we do. There's a couple little things we take out, but we add to it. We don't take things out. So pretty much everything that's in the original, we kind of start there as our base, and we might move things around. We might take things that were not in the introduction and move them to the introduction because they make more sense. We tend to do that with the wandering encounters. A lot of times we'll take the wandering encounters, if they're spread out, we'll actually move them to a wandering encounter table, which is what we did. In the original, there was no wandering encounters around Hamlet, and there was a little bit around Nold. So what we did is we kind of moshed them together and kind of put them where there was one big encounter, several encounter tables based on the terrain, and then we did some set areas as well, which we'll show you. But we start off with our basic introduction, and
So there's one thing there, Chris, on page
Yep.
231 that I think is interesting. The whole piece on treasure, um,
Yes.
and why that has to be different. You know, between when gold was kind of important for your EXP and such. You know, maybe it was inflated a bit more back in the old way, but in 5e the economy, man, if you dump that gold on on a first level character in 5e, wow, I'm time to retire.
It's time to retire. Exactly. It was amazing how just the villagers in Hamlet and Nold had, like, $6,000 gold piece silver setting service setting hidden in a tree in the back, kind of thing, or under a floorboard in the yeah, it was kind of crazy. And a lot of people, again, who are not familiar with these, again, we don't change things. So the line I always use is, if there was 17 orcs in the original encounter, there's still 17 orcs there. It's kind of up to the game master to kind of do that. We thought about changing everything to make it fit into, but we didn't want to. It would change the module so much that it wouldn't have that original feel to it. And we just felt that if we took that 5,000 GP diamond, that was on level 1 of the Moat House dungeon, just for example, that would just, it would kind of not taint it, but it just wouldn't be the same, even though that should really have been 100 GP gem. So we kept it in there, but we have extensive notes, or a couple pages of notes of how you should probably adjust it if you're going to run this, for a modern game. So, but it is interesting to see how it was done originally. And since you've got the first edition printed right in the beginning of the book, you can actually go back and check and just see, the difference between one encounter versus the other encounter, and exactly how we change things. So now we're getting into the player's background. And I did do something a little bit different for the background. And I noticed that you ran it actually on your first session, where we actually had an ambush encounter before you actually get the Hamlet. So if you guys remember the original Village of Hamlet, there wasn't a whole lot of direction going on there, where basically it was a village, and it was actually even a little confusing on what you were supposed to do. And I would say even more than a little confusing. If you were not a really good game master back in the day, you probably struggled with how to even get the characters to the Moat House. So I devised an encounter that happens just outside of Hamlet, where you're basically jumped by a bunch of bandits, and it ties in to the bandits that are actually in town, and also in the Moat House. So it's optional, and that's why we put it in the introduction section. We didn't want to actually put it in the chapter with the Village of Hamlet, because it was going to be a little bit too different, but I felt that we debated it back and forth where we should actually put it. So we actually call it a prelude encounter on the road to Hamlet. So.
Well, in our game, it definitely was an impactful encounter, because the way I played the bandits, there was a couple of them that maybe were sons of farmers in in the outlying territories, and they were just doing it for the money. They're poor kids or whatever. So the two of them they didn't kill, and have been trying to like put to work and do good things for Hamlet to try to rehab them. So it was a fun encounter, and it's still coming up in our game 17 sessions later. So
Nice.
that's kind of cool.
One of the things in the original is not all of the NPCs in the village were named. So we did create a table so you can randomly determine some names if you need to in a pinch. Also, there was no rumors. Actually, back in the day, rumors were a huge part of it. There was no official rumor table. I think was there a rumor table in Nolb? There might have been. So we actually came up with a rumor table for Hamlet, and then I think we have a separate rumor table for Nolb, just to kind of push the PCs along and get them kind of moving in the right direction. So we got some nice new artwork. So this is we're at our second map here. So all of our maps have been redone by William McCausland. I hope I'm saying that right. So hopefully you can see that. That's our second gatefold map. So same thing, it's the village of Hamlet again, but this is the new version of the map. And again, there's nothing changed on it. I'm going to get to, when we get to Knoll, I'll kind of call out a couple of the changes there. But I'm going to sort of, don't want to bore people too much with going through this, but I love sidebars, by the way. So a lot of times I'll move information over to sidebars to call out special attention to it instead of burying it in one of the encounters. Let's see, we are still going through the village. So we've got the Church of St. Cuthbert and the guard tower. And we are getting to the Moat House dungeon. I had to have artwork that featured giant frogs. So very iconic.
I don't remember. Is there one of the giant crayfish somewhere?
There is.
There is, right?
Yeah. Big fan of the giant crayfish. Actually, if you check, I added a giant crayfish in one of the additional encounters in B2, the B2 conversion that was directly inspired by this. There we go. There's the crayfish in all of its glory. So definitely the Moat House dungeon, I've run that probably 6 times in all kinds of different editions. It doesn't get much more classic than that. So we are coming a little bit towards the end of the first book here, and you can see we haven't even gotten to the temple yet. We are still working our way. So we have a section on wandering and wilderness encounters. This is all, for the most part, this is new material. There was a couple of wandering monster encounter tables in Knoll, and I took those and converted those over and added to them. And then we also added a bunch of set encounter locations to the region, and a lot of those tie directly into the temple or the village of Hamlet. Just explaining like where all those knolls came from, plus just some fun encounters like Ankhegs, because that's a classic first edition trope. And as you can see here, we've got wandering and monster tables for each different terrain. Yep, so these are all, this is all pretty much new material. Some of the new maps of these areas: an abandoned farmstead, an owlbear with wings, because why not?
Flying owlbears. It's the only
Flying
thing
owlbears.
you're finding the normal owlbear.
Yep. So, and then we start getting to the town of Knoll. I missed the map. Yes, I did. So we're getting into Knoll now. It's hard to tell because this map is kind of small, but Knoll originally had 4 encounter areas that were detailed in the original module. We went ahead and added 9 more, so now you have 13 areas that are actually detailed, and they're all kind of sinister and not exactly nice to kind of fit the tone of the village. And as I mentioned, we have rumor tables. We got some rumors specifically to the village of Knoll, and then some specifically for the region around the temple. We went through and I actually keyed out the Waterside Hostel. Had some notes on some of the individual rooms and everything, but so I went and fleshed those out for some of the NPCs, just in case the PCs end up exploring there. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So now we actually get to the temple. There's the map of the upper part of the temple. And that's pretty much where we end the first book. Most of what's back here, so this is the upper level. Not a whole lot going on in the upper level of the temple. It's mostly empty. And then we have all of the maps reproduced in the back here, a little bit larger for you to use. And then the end sheets we have for the first book is the pastel cover of T1. So that was the original, that was the first printing. I think it was the first and maybe the second printing, but it's at least the first printing. All right, let's get to the next book. We're running out of show. All right, our end covers on this one is the classic Parkinson artwork, like the cover there, dark gray. And I believe that is a different piece of artwork, I believe. Just check in to make sure I get, yep, that is a completely different piece of artwork there, elemental themed. And we got your table of contents. So the whole rest of this book is the Temple of Elemental Evil, and then all of the appendices, the new monsters, the new spells, new everything. Obviously, we redid all of the maps, and this is how they look like there. We've got wandering monsters for each level, and we go through, and in each room, many of the rooms had read aloud text, but if they didn't, we added it. So that was one of the big additions that you get in that. And it was kind of strange how they did that in the past. How some places would have read aloud and others wouldn't. But it was ironic if you look at the encounters. The read aloud text was there. It was just buried in the encounter. So a lot of times it was just a matter of moving things and then just kind of just fluffing it out and kind of making it make a little bit more sense when you pull it apart. So yeah, so this is for the very first mega dungeon. There's a lot of encounters here. So I hear your characters, your group is actually in the dungeon right now.
Yeah, they've had I think 3 or 4 trips in so far, and they have just run afoul of the fire cultists on the second level. So
Okay.
went through the Hydra room, which shocked me. I was like, I thought for sure that they would run away and go the other direction. But they didn't. They had to stand and fight, and there it is. Yeah, that's a cool piece of art of that encounter.
Did you actually use it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice. I love it.
We had the troll caretaker come in, just like he just lost, like the guy from Return of the Jedi that comes in and sees his
nice
the big beast go down.
Oh, that's awesome.
Tears in his eyes. Killed my pet.
Nice. That's cool. So I want to get to some of the cool parts of this book, which is probably more towards the back. Yep, artwork spread throughout. Obviously, all the artwork is new. Some of it inspired pretty heavily of some of the originals, but we try not to do that too much. We try to do either a different take on things, or there's sometimes it's just too tempting to base something off of one of the classic pieces. There's an awesome piece right there in the fungus room, I believe that is. So the pleasure chamber. So I guess
chat's asking. Yes, book 2 is all the 5e version of the basically the main levels of the temple and the nodes, right?
Yep, we're gonna get to the nodes, and we're gonna show you guys a little bit the nodes here. So we are coming up on the nodes soon. So we're not quite halfway through the book yet. The Book of Vile Darkness actually was not in, or is it in the back of the DM's guide? But we actually fleshed it out for 5th edition and put it in its own little sidebar there. And because that's always fun doing. We come across magic items that have not been converted to 5th edition yet in any of the Wizards of the Coast books, and so we get to actually create them. That's definitely the funnest part. All right, so here we go. So there was an introductory chapter on the nodes, so we kept that, and we actually added to it. In that chapter, there was a section on spell variations where you could basically cast a fireball and make it an acid ball, or you can make it a frost ball or something. So we included rules on that, how to do that in 5th edition. We have the list. There was a list of spells that did not work, or they had altered effects in the nodes. So I went through, this was tedious. I went through the entire list of spells in 5th edition, only the player's handbook, and went and basically updated them for how they would work in the nodes. So some of them just don't work. You can see no effect. The Find Familiar doesn't work. Pretty much anything, if you're trying to conjure anything, didn't work. But some things, like obviously Wall of Fire was like much more powerful on the fire node. There was also a table of random magical treasures, because again, it wasn't fully fleshed out. I thought about just not including this, since we went ahead and actually did flesh out the entire nodes, but I included the table in there, updated the 5th edition, just in case somebody wanted to do their own thing, if they just wanted to take the maps, kind of like B1 was that way, where it wasn't a fully stocked dungeon. So we actually included all the tables and charts so that you could do it yourself. we went and did our version, but we kind of kept it in there so that other people could do their own thing. There's separate wandering monsters for the different nodes. There is an overall, like for all of the nodes, and then each individual node has its own table. Basically, once you got onto a specific node, there might be some critters that are moving around. And all right, so early on, probably a half hour ago, I showed you that you originally got about half a page, maybe a full page for each node. So here we start with the air node, and this is on page 520. We start off with the general features of the node, the wandering encounters, and then there's your updated map. And some of these maps are tweaked a little bit because we actually made modifications to them. We didn't take anything away. And now all of the encounters now have been fully developed. And there's read aloud text for all of them, statistics for everything, treasure. And we used those original outlines to guide us. We didn't exactly follow them, but we, if it said in room 4 there's a lair of frost giants, we tried to pretty much keep that. We would change a couple things around based on things, but we're still in the air elemental node here. And that goes till page 535. So that node was 15 pages long of all brand new material. And then repeat, rinse and repeat for the earth node. And so on. So that was the big part. We always look to try and develop new material for these books. That was primarily where we went with our new material, doing the nodes. I mean, I added so much extra material. I mean, I thought about adding another level to the Moat House dungeon, but I actually fleshed it out. I shared it on one of our, I'm not sure if that came out yet, but I shared some of my concepts for another whole level of the Moat House dungeon, a third level, and I just couldn't come to myself to actually put it in there. I just felt like it was ruining the original, and it wasn't going to be as cool as the original. So I ended up not using it. So maybe someday I'll revisit that. That'd be a cool like one shot to run at like a convention or something.
Yeah, well, what the nodes definitely work. I've said this a couple of times in other places, but the nodes really could work as one shots or two shots themselves. I think I ran the air node at Dungeon Con, and just the way that the way that you developed like the encounters and the denizens there, like it made sense why they were there, and you were able to kind of flesh out like a story just with those. It was way more than that original outline that you got in the original, where it was just here's the stock dungeon, but you got to figure out what the narrative is. So I think that was really cool.
A lot of that was necessity because those were not balanced encounters. You would have a couple of sturges in one room, and then you would have 6 frost giants in the next room, and it was very tricky to actually do some of the balancing on that. So we had to actually put a lot of social interactions in there in that regard. Yeah, that was definitely a tricky part of doing it. But you're right. As a matter of fact, this Sunday, I think noon to 3 Eastern time, one of our playtester extraordinaires that does some stuff for Goodman Games will be running one of the nodes. I don't even know which node he's running, to be honest with you. I gave him all 4. So he's going to be doing a live stream running through that. And then I'm sure at Empire of the Cyclops Con, we're probably going to have a couple of these run as well if folks want to play through them. It's a good way to kind of get a little taste of the module before taking the full plunge. So we are coming just about to the end. That is actually the end. So we have a very small chapter on deities, demigods, and demonesses, where we detail Zugtmoy. Now, she's already been detailed in 5e. So we basically, that's just a reprint of her statistics. But Ayuz and St. Cuthbert, we did actually develop the statistics for them completely for 5th edition. So you can use those in your game now. And now we get to all the new stuff. So we've got characters. So we have pre-gens, if people want to use everything. And this is kind of interesting. If people look at the names of the pre-gens, they might see where I grabbed them from. So originally, T1 through 4 was the very first super module. And you could, and I did this, I went through most of this when I was a kid. You could run T1 through 4, then you could run A1 through 4, the slavers, and then you could run GDQ 1 through 7. And in the G modules, there was a bunch of, I think there were 10th level characters. So I went and took them and kept their names and kept their, race and classes, and then brought them all down to first level and converted them to 5th edition so that you could use them. And if, you could actually go through, well, maybe someday you'll be able to go through a 5th edition version of the Slavers. And then G123 has already been done by Wizards of the Coast. So we have tables. That's just if you want to get started on characters. Then we've got all the non-player characters. So this is all of the things like at the back of the monster manual, the guards and all the NPCs. There are a lot of NPCs in this book. Each one's got artwork. The NPCs go for a lot of pages, let's just say. They go all the way from 599 to 636. So you get about 37, 38 pages of NPCs, and then new monsters. And again, most of these new monsters are not new per se. They're just things that have not been converted to 5th edition from Wizards of the Coast yet. They are probably in other books that other companies have done. But like the Algoid, that was a monster that was originally in the Fiend Folio. And the Monster Manual Volume 2 was out right around this time also. So there was a bunch of monsters, the Elemental Grooves, and a bunch of different funguses. So we got to convert a lot of those if they weren't already in 5th edition. We got to convert them. If they were in another book, that's an official Wizards of the Coast book, we had to use the same statistics. So those are just reprints. I believe the Bodak, I believe is that. I think that's in actually a couple of other books. But like the bowler had never occurred, so we actually statted that up, and that's a fun part where we get to do that. And we got artwork for most of these guys, most of the interesting ones at least. So I couldn't resist the dragon.
Do you have a favorite among these? The new ones that only show up here.
Yeah, I've always the fire toad. A huge fan of the fire toad. I mean, a giant toad that belches fireballs. You can't get enough of that. And we also have the fire bat too. A lot of really fun critters that were in the nodes, quite frankly. Giant ice toads were in the water node. A lot of cool things. Yeah, I would say the fire toad was one of my favorites. Ice lizard, crazy, a little lizard thing that can turn into a white dragon, just nuts. So yeah, there was lots of things. Just a lot of things went in 1st edition. You could do a lot of different stuff. Yeah, so I do want to show a couple of other. We also have a section of, okay, so after we finish with monsters, we get into some new items and new magic, and we actually designed a couple of we did 5e stats for a couple of the classic pole arms and stuff that were that hadn't made it over into the rulebook. That the reason we did some of these was because they occur so many times in the module. You're like, oh, I'm just tired of replacing this with a halberd, So it's like, I'm just gonna create a feathered fork, and so it's like there, now it's done, and now we can have it, and it's like we're done with it. New magic items, several of them are cursed items, but we have several new magic items, and again, a lot of these are not brand new. Some of them were kind of different ones. The gargoyle cloak, I don't think was ever in like the DMG or anything like that, but it was actually in the module. And then obviously the Orb of Golden Death, or the Yellow Skull artifact, we fully detailed that for you. The Pearl of Wisdom, my favorite magic item. If you guys ever watch the show Talking TSR, at the end we always do the Pearl of Wisdom. When we first started Talking TSR, we were just finishing up with Temple of Elemental Evil, and the Pearl of Wisdom was something that we wanted as our show, but there was no Pearl of Wisdom in 5e, so I put it in here. I put it in the water node I was working on at the time, and we had artwork made up for it and everything. So that's the same artwork that we used for our TV show Talking TSR. And we are coming. There is one more thing. So this is a little bit hard to see, but this is this first handout. It's actually a Game Master handout. The original village of Hamlet was kind of an unorganized mess with the NPCs. Most of them weren't named, and it was hard to tell like what place was what. Some of the buildings were farms, some of them was a blacksmith, but it wasn't called a blacksmithy or whatever. So I went through and actually created a table that actually has the name of what the place is. the actual function of the place, so you could look at it really quickly, and then a list on the side here of the NPCs. And if the NPCs were named, I would list that, and I would list who their affiliation was. There was this whole thing with the Old Faith, and some of them were following the Old Faith, some of them were following the St. Cuthbert, and some of them didn't have any faith. So I put that in there as well. And then if the NPC didn't have a name, like this guy up here, the farmer, and his son, I would actually leave that blank so that if you made a photocopy of this, you could just fill that in on your own. So that when your PCs go to area number 1 and run into Farmer Joe, for example, you can just write that down so that when they go back there, you still call him Farmer Joe. So one of the things that the original module didn't handle very well. And then we have just a bunch of players' handouts. We have, some menus for the
I love
various
the
skins.
menus. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, those are fun to make. Those are fun to make. I like cooking, so those are really cool. And it was funny when I first had them made up. It was funny when I sent the things off to the artist. The end of the welcome wench was all beat up and terrible looking, and then the waterside hostel menu was like all fancy and nice. And I'm like, oh no, you got to switch those. I'm like, it's like the waterside hotel is like a dive, and I'm like, and I'm like, the other place is not a fancy place, but it should definitely be different. So that was one of the things where I had to catch and have that switched, the background switched on that. So, and that's it. So you can the various handouts, and then again we print the maps for volume 2 again, so you have all the maps. And finally, a bunch of filler pages. We had to get to a certain page count, and then we have the green, that wonderful zombie flesh green from the original Village of Hamlet, and then the back of the book. So that's it. So
That's it.
Thanks
That's
everybody.
it. Like it was nothing.
Yeah,
A lot. It's a lot of product. It's well worth it. So thanks for taking us through it. And so where should people go if they haven't yet ordered the Temple of Elemental Evil?
So if you want it quicker, you can get it from our website, obviously, but it will be in your friendly local game stores. So if you want to support your friendly local game store, you can order it through them. Probably take a little bit longer to get. We're processing all of the pre-orders right now. Literally, I mean, this arrived at the warehouse last week. It was early last week, I believe. So we started shipping them out late last week. So all pre-orders are going first. That's probably going to take about 2 weeks probably to get all the pre-orders out. So then it'll go out to distributors, and then it'll get to game stores after that. So if you want it sooner, I would probably go to our website. If you're patient, wait, definitely order it if you want to support your friendly local game store, which I think is a great idea to do. They've obviously had a rough last year and a half, so if you can certainly support your friendly local game store, do that. You're probably gonna have to wait a couple extra, another couple weeks before you get it. But you've waited this long, so what's another couple of weeks? So just to work through it. So awesome. So Alex, thanks. So tell us once again where they can find you at.
Yeah, if you we have been running this as sort of an open campaign. We'd love to have you. If you're looking for people to play, come find us. We stream over on twitch.tv/20 sides to every story. If you visit our page, you could find our link to our Discord. Come join us in our Discord. Someone will point you in the direction of a game sign up. If you want to see some past playthroughs of our first 16 or so sessions of this, you can check that out. We post those on YouTube at youtube.com/20 sides to every story.
Great. So awesome. And episode of Talking TSR coming out this Sunday. We're going to actually be diving into the Slaver series. So we're going to be doing A1, the Slave Pits of the Undercity, one of my favorites in the Slaver series. So hopefully folks can join us. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the official Goodman Games Twitch channel. And yeah, check us out all over, and by all means, jump on the forums or on Discord and let us know when you get your books, what you think, and hopefully you guys like them. And they should keep your group busy for many, many months, if not a year or more. So everybody enjoy. Thanks a lot, Alex, for hosting and everything. And shout out to Elena behind the screen, doing an awesome job as always. This was all kind of thrown together at the last minute. But thanks everybody for pitching in, and we will see you soon. Have a good night, everybody.